welcome back to Words with Wayman. I'm your host, as always, Matt Wayman. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to get right into it. Special Part 1, local St. Louis comedian, all-around sweet boy. Welcome to the podcast, Rafe Williams.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No, we've been trying to get together for a little bit. I'm glad you could come out. Want to throw this one at you right out the gate. You do improv and stand-up. Which one did you do first?
Stand-up was my first love.
You started a little bit later. How old were you when you started?
Well, I started doing it seriously at about 33.
33.
Like I did a couple drunken sets of stand-up
Nice.
in like Carbondale. Ironically, at a place called Muggsy McGuire's that
good.
Hannibal Buress was a regular at.
Nice.
Before he was Hannibal Buress.
I didn't know.
He went to school there for I went up and did some terrible, like, it was terrible.
Yeah. But
Like
you
jokes
have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Everybody starts. I feel like everybody gets super blue, or everybody gets like really aggressive right away, and then for like a month, while you're figuring it out.
I just couldn't work up. I had stage fright really bad, so I couldn't like work up the courage unless I was bombed out of my mind.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it just all went to shit pretty fast.
Everything. The first time I ever went up, I was like trying to read off this piece of paper, and it lasted for one sentence, and I just blacked out after that. Don't remember how it went. I heard it was bad though.
You write it on your hand. A lot of people write it on their hand.
Yeah, that's hacky.
But yeah, I got back into stand-up in 2012, early 2012, and I started doing improv in like late 2012. So it was kind of a.
What do you like about both of them? Because a lot of stand-ups have a distaste in their mouth for improv, and I feel like it goes a little bit backwards the other way, but not as much.
Yeah, I don't get the improv. I think improvisers admire stand-ups a lot and like think that it's cool, and I think a lot of them want to do it. But there's like a higher risk of having prepared material fail than there is, and also you're an island, and a lot of stand-ups do shit on improv or whatever, but it's usually probably people, because stand-ups can be control freaks. I'm the same way. I mean, I like that about stand-up, is that that's my creation. I'm in control of it. The success or failure rides on my personality.
It's a single-person sport as opposed
to
a team activity.
Right.
I always thought that improv, when it's good, is like magic, and when it's bad, it's worse than any comedy open mic you could even go to.
Right. But I think that's something that stand-ups delude themselves about, too, is I'm like, oh, God, an improv show. I'd rather suck on a tailpipe than watch that. And I'm like, guys, I've been to some of our open mics. They ain't gold. They ain't all gold.
Yeah.
Like, some of those are a real marathon to get through.
At least improv, they tried to create something new that's never been done.
Right.
Instead of doing that same joke that they've been doing for 6 months.
There's good and bad of both,
Yeah, I loved improv because I always thought it was like the most free that you could be on stage, because you're not going up there with material, and if you go up there with preconceived notions, you're almost hurting yourself.
Sure. And I always say, my opinion of it is like, and I've had other comics, like crap on improv on podcasts and stuff, and I'm just like, how'd that help you be a better stand-up? Comics that are like, all I care about stand-up, man, getting better and doing my thing. And I'm like, well, you spent 20 minutes bashing improv. How did that make you a better stand-up comedian?
Go write more instead of just some smack. I think there's a lot of crossover there. I think they help each other a lot.
I do, too, and I actually think, in my opinion, which doesn't matter, I think improv is more conducive to stand-up than the other way around, because I think it helps you tremendously with act-outs. Instead of saying, my mom said this or my uncle was like, you just become your uncle and you can step in and out of characters quickly because they teach you that in improv. You got to be able to think on your feet, step in, play a character, step out, come back in, play somebody else.
Yeah.
And it makes you a better comedic actor. And I think that sometimes you can sell bits as a stand-up a little better if you're comfortable in that space of like stepping in and out of characters.
I think it helps tighten dialogue up a lot, too. It like makes your dialogue more concise and teaches you how to write dialogue pretty well.
For writing, it's tremendously helpful, especially writing, like, not necessarily stand-up, but scripts or scenes, like understanding scenic work and, like, how to get to the meat of something quickly as opposed to having 18 pages of dialogue.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of that stuff. You've been submitting late-night packets and working with some companies in town. I guess I know some of this stuff is undercover. So what can you tell us about, like, your script writing and stuff like that?
I do get a lot of work. Like, I think you can get a lot of work I've done everything from punching up cat food commercials for Purina, which is like, it's not a dream come.
Gig.
Yeah, it is. It's not a dream come true, comedically. But it's like those corporations, like if you can do that kind of work, it's a good skill. I think any skill set in comedy is a good one to work on and have. Yeah. So, I've done cat food commercials. I'll punch up stuff for, I work a lot with Cool Fire Media.
Yeah.
I'll help them like develop material. I've written for the Riz Show.
As the resident comedy expert, kind of.
I actually wrote, it was some kind of promotion they were doing for Emo's Pizza, and it was like it's like these oven confessionals, and it was like, can you write these one-liners of like confessions? So it's kind of like a late-night packet in that way.
Yeah,
like,
for people that don't know, Emo's is like the St. Louis pizza chain.
Yeah, it's like, called Lena's. Pick it out at your local grocer. Provel cheese, what's in it? We don't know.
We haven't. Was that one of them?
That's like... But it was almost like, it reminded me, like, you remember Conan O'Brien when he used to do, like, secrets with, like, a bottle of Jack Daniels on the table, and they'd tell you some ridiculous thing about themselves. It was kind of like that.
That's the thing. That's a pace, though. I mean, it's like, if you really want to make a living doing this, if you actually want to do this as a career instead of, like, a hobby, you have to make these choices early. Yeah,
and I think that, like, a lot of times you can supplement a career as a writer for late night shows and things like that. You have to be able to do. There's different kinds of monologue jokes are different.
For packet submissions and stuff like that.
Yeah, and joke basket jokes, which is like, joke basket's just like a recurring thing, like thank you notes or in the year 2000, and it's like you're writing. They are kind of like throwback one-liner, but in that format, that's what they look for. They look for something quick and palatable. You can't write a big thinker as a monologue joke because the host is moving on to the next joke.
So many jokes.
And if the audience is like, oh, wait, was that about international trade and child slavery? That was brilliant. Like, it has to be pretty on the nose and straightforward. So learning that skill set, I think, is helpful.
It's a different tool. And how do you feel about, have you always been from St. Louis, first off?
I grew up in southern Illinois, so like down near Carbondale. I grew up in a town of 500 people called Dowell, Illinois.
Okay.
So.
It seems like you've gotten a lot of, work and pain work out of St. Louis.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here for 15 years. It's home to me now. Like, I couldn't imagine moving back to, like, the rural. Because southern Illinois it should be northern Kentucky. It really should be northern Kentucky. That was the working
title for the name, but they're like, we can't. The northern Kentucky's not going to like that if we take it.
Yeah. Because, like, I even remember being in the military, and I'd be like, I'm from Illinois. And they're like, oh, Chicago.
Like, nope. Nobody knows what else.
There's a whole vestigial tale that hangs off Chicago. That's the state of Illinois. that
nobody talks about or talks to.
Everyone's like, what's that for?
Like,
just corn.
Yeah. Corn and inbred racism. Like
corn and poverty.
Not a lot of money. How did you originally get into like doing the stuff like that, like writing for shows? Was it just people that you knew, connections that you made?
Yeah, man, it was just a weird convergence of circumstances. Like, I'm a big believer in like the universe will kind of, I don't know how I feel about religion, but I think if you tell the universe what you want,
spiritual,
and you work towards it, things will just happen. And like so many things had to happen for me to be where I'm at right now. It's insane. It's like while I had to get sober because I was out of my mind, 3 DUIs deep and like just having a horrible life. Yeah, going for the record, being like, how many can I get before I do real jail time?
I was pretty good at drinking, guys. I was
I mastered it. Yeah, I mastered it. If you guys need tips.
The driving part that's the hardest.
Well, it's because your sober brain's like, I will not drive drunk. That's dumb. But your drunk brain's like, but we need Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And no one else is awake. So
this Taco Bell's
guess
happening.
We're going. Yeah, it's happening. We're going. Got a DUI in the Taco Bell drive-thru. That's never. Then ask the police ask the police if they could just go ahead and take me through. They booked me, threw me in the car. I'm just
Thank
like,
God
look, man, we're already here, dude. Like, I really could use a cheesy gordita crunch. That's all I'm saying.
This is going to be $1,000 either way. Can we make it $1,005 and I can get some food out of this deal?
They opted out.
That's awesome.
So I had to get sober, and then I had to like tackle stage fright. So I started doing Toastmasters, which is a weird little thing.
Short formish or something? Or?
No, Toastmasters is like an international organization that's like public speaking.
Okay.
It's almost like I just did immersion therapy, and that's kind of how I got into improv. I was like, I'm so uncomfortable sober up in front of people that I have to like get over it.
Yeah.
So I started giving Toastmasters like a consequence, because if you think about it, we train ourselves like public speaking is like the biggest fear.
Mm-hmm.
People would rather, be in the box and giving the eulogy, as the old saying goes. That's bigger than death. And it's like I was sitting in a turn lane of the highway one day, and like 16-wheelers were like swinging by, and my car was rocking back and forth. I'm like, I'm literally 3 feet from certain death.
Mm-hmm.
If one of these guys like falls asleep or just like has a stroke while he's driving down the road, like I'm just a sitting duck, and I could give a shit. Like I'm playing with my iPod, I'm not even paying attention, but I'm like, if you tell me I got to get up in front of 15 people and talk for 5 minutes, my body like prepares itself to fight a lion.
I had people crying in my college speech class for
Isn't that
that
crazy?
reason. Crying, it's just in front of 7 people that you all know.
Yeah, it's ingrained in us to be like a fear. So I had to tackle that. So I started doing Toastmasters, and it's like they kind of train you your whole life. Like it's always for a class, a grade, a book report, a big promotion at work, a presentation that your job's like. No one ever just like gets up. You get around your friends, you get up and tell stories, but it's like recreating that safe space is impossible.
And your friends will laugh at you. They're gonna laugh.
Right, and if they don't, they'll still like go out with you later that night and not think you're an idiot. Well, they might think you're an idiot, but they'll still hang out with you. So I started doing that. Started doing stand-up. I started practicing, like, because they'll let you talk about anything you want in there. So I just started writing, like, humorous stories, and I started giving these humorous stories in front of the same group of people, and it's just, like, positive. They'll give you feedback. They'll give you, like, hey, this is funny. You touch your face a lot when you talk. So every speech, they focused on a different part of your presentation, whether it was your touching your face or they would make notes of how many times you say and and like unnecessary conjunctive language, which taught me brevity, and I started like building a skill set. Then I started doing open mics and bombing like everyone else.
You have to.
And like I threw out all my old crappy material, started from scratch, and was Googling like stand-up workshops, comedy workshops, because I was like, there's got to be something, just another way for me to get, and the improv shop popped up. And my knowledge of improv to that point was like short form.
Yeah, for people that don't know, just real quick, it's a couple guys that were in Chicago, right? That originally from St. Louis, that moved back to St. Louis and started the improv shop.
Sure, literally, like Craig started as a Craigslist ad.
Yeah,
and it's grown into
one location down in the Grove.
A legitimate theater. Like we get people from Chicago come down and are like, hey, we like what you guys got going on. This is what it used to be like up here, before. It's like I went to Second City recently, and I love it. And it's great. It's still the mecca of improv, but it is a machine now.
Sure,
like
that's got to be hard. Tough.
Well, I had to go to a show in Second City, and I walked in one door, and I had to leave the building and go into another building. Like it's a complex now, and it's like, oh, you're looking for Second City Old Town Theater 4. So go out these revolving doors, go down a half a block. Take the tram up to, and they have like a restaurant, a movie theater. And it's awesome up there, but it's like, I went like 15 years ago when it was still a small, like there was the upstairs experimental theater and the main stage. And now it's become very much a training facility, and it's great. I think people should do it. Yeah, it's good.
It shows that people want improv, and it shows that improv is this thing that people need to do. But yeah, there is something about getting lost and being just a cog in the machine and kind of getting swept under the bus a little bit, probably. It's hard to stand out.
Yeah, and I think that improv helps to, like, back to your original question, I think everyone has to get their 10,000 hours, man. You got to get stage time. You have to get comfortable being up in front of and failing in front of people. And nothing will get you more comfortable failing in front of people than improv. I mean, we rehearse 2 hours a week. You're on stage for 40 minutes. And the cool thing is you share a little bit of the failure.
Yeah, it's the worst I've ever felt, failing in front of a crowd, worse than any stand-up, but it also didn't feel as bad because you're sharing it with other people that you know and really like.
Yeah, and you know that they're funny. So, like, you start to see those things in yourself and be a little more forgiving to yourself for not killing it every single time because you're like, oh, I know that person's fun. I've seen this person be really funny, and they ate a dick.
You can't bring the stand-up mentality, which is set up punchline, crush, 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 to improv, or else you're going to come off like a big dick on stage.
Yeah, and a lot of people struggle with that. I struggle with that.
I struggled with it when I started. Just like nobody else is going to make him laugh. Well, I felt like I was going to be the one.
Yeah, I had like a mental clock, and I admitted that to Andy Sloy when he's like, Craig Kukowski, who's like. Writes with Rich Tallarico, who's the head writer of Key and Peele, and they've been doing improv at, like, Iowa West. Is like, he gave me a note one time, and it was like, you have the blessing and the curse of being able to be funny moment to moment. This can be your strength, but also your worst weakness of, like, because you don't, instead of sinking into one thing, it's like you see the opportunity to make the joke and you take it. And it's like to the detriment of the scene sometimes, and it's hard to hear because I'm like, oh, sorry, I made everyone laugh, man. I guess I suck. And they're like, but
that's not what it was about, though.
You got the short. It's a short-sighted thing. It's like, you fucking said something about jerking off, and everybody lost their mind. But then, like,
where do we go now? Somebody had to edit the scene because of that.
The scene between the mother and daughter is now garbage, and we still have to do 20 more minutes and play with the information that came beforehand, and like it is detrimental, but it's hard to get over yourself because you're like, I'm the funny person.
Yeah.
You guys, you work in accounting. You're a crisis counselor. I'm a professional comedian, and it's like
respect me. I made
right,
$15,000 last year.
I made upwards. I drive a '96 Jeep Grand Cherokee, peanut butter leather seats. It's parked out front. It's got 3 tickets on it.
It's got 4 payments left on it, too. Before we get out of here on this first one, because we're coming down to the end of the time, I just want to talk about, just round it off with improv. You guys got something really cool. You guys are going to the Del Close Marathons this year, which is awesome. Just talk briefly about how you guys got that, because I think people really want to hear about it.
Yeah, man, they did national auditions, and I think there was something like 16, 17 theaters. I don't even know how many teams, a couple hundred teams probably, doing the Improv for Humans, Matt Besser's podcast, like doing his format. You had to video it. You kind of have to, it's almost like doing old-timey radio because you're doing improv in microphones sitting at a desk because it's all audio. So you have to kind of create characters on the fly and do things like that, tell stories, and then try to link it all back together. And I play on a team with Ben Lyons, Eric Christensen, Melissa Darch, and myself called Dad Van. We did the regionals at
great name, by the way.
IS that's when we went to LA. I got to drive the van, and I drove the van that no one could smoke in because like only a couple of us could get. So the name came from when we all went to LA. Like one of the producers drove the van. And he let everybody smoke pot and cigarettes, and like was the cool dad. He was like the cool uncle, and I drove the other van. And
shut it down.
And I was like, I can't do cigarette smoke. I don't want you smoking dope in here. So like they started calling it Dad Van, and nobody wanted to ride in it. So like this one van would be packed, and then I'd have like 4 people riding in my van when we'd go places in LA.
That's great.
But there was nothing I could do about it. Like I couldn't. I'm like, hey man, I'm one of the ones that has to drive. So I just
I want that leg room. I'm going to Dad Van today.
I bought a bunch of goldfish and put it in like. Crackers and put them in like Ziploc bags and put them in the console.
A bunch of moist towelettes to wipe people's faces down.
But Improv Shop was chosen. We did a regional competition, sent that off. They went through like the 18 or 20 finalists, picked us to be the top 3. Then we had to do a second hour-long show, and it was us, Memphis, and Nashville, and Austin were the cities that qualified. And then we found out they picked us, and we're going to Del Close Marathon, UCB Theater, to perform Improv for Humans with Matt Besser. And they gave us a second show, which is cool. They gave us a show that we can get up on our feet and do like a traditional improv show. So that's nice.
That's the coolest. Well, congratulations on that. I just wanted to talk about that before.
Yeah, it's in late June. We're excited.
Late June, if you're in New York, check it out. If not, it might. I don't know if they're going to put it online or not. Just right before we get out of here, do you just want to give everybody out there where they can find you on the internet?
You can find me at www.rafewilliams.com. It is a half-finished website, but there are links. It'll get done. If I just keep putting it out there, so if people go to it, my embarrassment and shame will make me.
That's what this is about.
You can find me on at I am Rafe Williams on Instagram and Twitter, and Rafe Williams Comedy on Facebook. It's RAFE don't mess up that third letter,
you
or
mess
it'll
that
get
up,
weird.
you are not allowed to listen to this podcast again. I'm not
That's
sure
right.
how we can do that, but I'm going to build an algorithm.
That's something I got to figure out because every time I go to a show and get done, and like people are like, "You're great, man. Really loved it." I'm like, "Oh, cool, man. Check me out on social media." He's like, "You got it, Greg Williams." No problem, because
you just need to buy that domain and get a redirect
to Greg.
Yeah,
Yeah, I should.
You're like, I'm getting 700 more hits a week now.
There's some dude named Greg Williams. It's like, man, I got a ton of followers.
People love me, and all he does is like he builds miniatures or something.
Yeah, I tried to get my at Rafe Williams from a guy on. There's another Rafe Williams. It's like he hasn't used Twitter since 2007.
It's a real piece of shit.
And he's like a molecular engineer in in Alabama, I think. And I messaged him on Facebook. I was like, "Hey, man, cool to meet another Rafe Williams. What's up?" And he's just like, "Oh, yeah, man, that's real cool." It's like, "Yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian. I see you're an engineer." And I was like, "I was checking out your Twitter, and I saw that you haven't really used it. Man, it'd really be helpful for my career if I could have that."
How much?
He didn't even respond. He's like,
no.
He's like, "Yeah, man, how's the weather in Illinois?" He glazed over it, and I let it go. I just decided.
Typical you know what I mean? Just glazing over it. That's funny. Guys, that's going to do it. We're going to leave on that note for part 1 with Rafe Williams. We'll be right back with part 2. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you all soon.